Hello, folks, and welcome to our Hangout. This is Data Tactics for a Post-Fact World. We are really happy to see you all coming into the Hangout right now. A couple of pointers for participating in this Hangout. First of all, if you can put yourself on mute, we greatly appreciate it. We do invite you to use the chat room for communication. So please, if you don't mind, if you can hit the icon in the upper left-hand corner and get that chat room open. And right now, please type hello into the text message box. We'd greatly appreciate that. One thing to point out is that if you do have a question or comment during this Hangout, please type it in the text message box. The reason we're doing this is because, as noted already, we have people from all across the world joining us in this Hangout. And because of different things with the infrastructure, it gets kind of painful to get people to come on and off mute and all that. So we're just asking people to stay on mute, but then use the text message box there to get out your questions, your comments, and all of that. We're going to take you through an exercise, and we're going to ask you guys to use the text message box through that. So if you don't mind, please type hello. I'm typing hello here so you guys get it. Type hello in the text message box and let us know you are there and paying attention. Great, thank you. I really appreciate that. So to start us out, we want to get introductions done. So I am super, super excited to be introducing my partner in crime on this Hangout, Lucy Chambers from Tech to Human. Lucy, how are you doing today? How are things in Berlin?
I am doing well, thank you, Dirk. So just very quickly about me, I run a project called Tech to Human, which is about the language that we use to talk about tech, helping people to make better decisions by helping them communicate better. I came to the topic of data tactics and data literacy. Sorry, Zara, I'm just going to mute you. 2 seconds. And I came to the topic of data tactics and data literacy in general through my work. I helped to co-edit a book called The Data Journalism Handbook, targeted at journalists, and later I worked for a project called School of Data, which taught data skills to NGOs and journalists. And my take on why I was interested in running this Hangout with Dirk is that I think this post-fact world that we're in, I think there's a lot of good practice which still applies. But what I'm particularly interested in is going a bit further, getting a bit better at the essence of data visualization, particularly in finding ways to show data unsecure and things that you're unsure about, and just nuance in general. So that's the angle that I'm particularly interested in this Hangout. And I'm going to hand back to Dirk.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. So I'm Dirk. I'm actually from the People's Republic of Stroud, having a typical England in that it's a bright sunny day here after a bank holiday that was everything but sunny. We got like every single kind of weather chucked at us over the weekend. I have a consultancy called Fab Writers, and basically I've spent the last 20 years working with activists and advocates on using technology and social change work. And the emphasis for me has always been the same. It's really about understanding how these things fit into a campaign strategy and knowing why you are using data and technologies. So for me, in terms of the post-fact world, I don't think that emphasis has actually changed. But I think what it is about is understanding how to use data in a way that effectively engages people. And within that, it resonates with people, that they see themselves in the story that is coming out of the data. One of the things that we've recently learned around fake news and post-fact is that it's actually about trust. People are much more likely to engage and believe data from sources that they trust. So for us as people that are data practitioners, it's really critical that we build trust with people so that they will engage with our data in a meaningful way. So we are so thankful to see more people joining us. Thank you so much for coming to the Hangout. What we are going to do today, we are going to take you through a series of questions for you that will hopefully start to demystify what it takes to develop data tactics and how it's related to something we call the data pipeline. We are then also going to get to your Q&As, and then we're going to share some more stuff about the workshop itself, which, by the way, is happening on May 19th in London. So we're going to kick off this exercise, and this exercise is going to be about getting you to answer questions that you need to know the answers to in order to build an effective data tactic. So let me hand it over to Lucy, who's going to start us off.
Sure. And just for anybody that joins while we were doing introductions, we're making heavy use of the text chat, and we're doing everything by text chat today. So you don't need to use your microphone, that's great. The first thing that I'd like you to type in the text box, if you would be so kind, is just a quick summary of what you're working on, and if you can concisely do so, what question data needs to answer for you. And this will allow us to make sure that we're pitching things to target your questions directly. So yeah, 2 questions. What are you currently working on? And what question does your data need to answer for you?
And it's fine for us to pause for just a minute and let people do that answering in the text message box.
Ooh, exciting.
And just curious, Sophie, that you put that in. You said real-time public health data. I'm wondering, like, what is that question that you're wanting that real-time public health data to actually answer? Is there a question within your health data that it's trying to answer?
And ditto, if you don't have any, if you're currently not working with data, and you're just on this Hangout because you're curious, that's totally fine. Just put a note to that effect in the chat.
To inform program design for maternal and reproductive health programs in Africa. And just curious, Sophie, that's a great example. Wondering if you might have a better focus in terms of, are you wanting to you say you want to inform? Is that to improve services? Is that to maybe make maternal health better, reproductive health better? Like, what is your actual end goal? And also just to say, like, the reason, that we are asking this question first off the bat is we really do want folks to understand that it really is about this end goal of, what is your focus? What are you trying to accomplish? Great, Hannah, thank you so much. Hannah's working on increasing CSO's capacity to strengthening for using data for activism. She needs data to tell her whether the approach and materials they are using are effective to increase data literacy skills, applying them responsibly to their context, and make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I know my SDGs. I know the song. Great. And also, Nani, really appreciate that. I'm working on identifying prisoners' rights on votings during the election times, number of prisoners in one state. Constitutionally, Malaysia doesn't have any law that restricts prisoners from voting. That's super, super helpful. So anything else, Lucy, do you think in terms of what we need to say about, setting your goal? What is that question that your data needs to answer?
we've just got one more submission just come in from Timothy. We can come back and read that one in a second. No, just I think I have run a couple of, facilitated a couple of events for people around like how to do an investigation or run a campaign, and people never leave themselves enough time to like actually articulate the question. And I think like if you can start yourself with a really, really sharp, clear question, or have like even a backlog of questions that the data potentially could answer, it saves you so much time.
Yeah, and often, right, we get into these things where, you know, people are just like, I have data, I need to use it, right? And just because you have data on something is not necessarily a reason to even start moving forward. It is very much having this understanding of what you are and what you want to do with the data. So our next question for you all, oh, and also just, sorry, I should read Timothy's, shouldn't I, before we move on. Timothy, you're currently working on a progressive political campaign in the US, and you want to run an ethical campaign as well as a campaign towards ethical ends. Just a question on that, Timothy, is that are you looking to get somebody elected? Is that for a referendum? What is it specifically within that progressive political campaign that you are actually trying to accomplish? Great. And you yourself, are you running for office? And it's great if you are. Let me move on to the next question. So in terms that you have the question that you are trying to answer, but the next thing that you really need to understand, and we're hoping everyone will type this in, who is it that you are trying to convince with your data? So who are you trying to convince with your answers around data? So is this a community member? Maybe this is an MP, could be a CEO of a corporation, a counselor in the media. This is likely to be a stakeholder. And the other part of this question that we think is really critical for people to be able to answer is whether or not these people are allies, neutral parties, or opponents. And the reason for that is allies are, you know, they're the people that we need to mobilize. So they're going to be doing a particular thing with data. Neutral parties, these are the people that we need to educate. So there's another role for what your data needs to do. Or your opponents, these are the people that you're probably going to need to counter or discredit. And so then again, there's another role for what your data needs to do. So folks, if you want to think about the who, so who is it that you need to convince with your answer? And if you want to put those specifics in the text box, that would be greatly appreciated. And also this thing of who, Lucy, what you know, why else do you think it's important for folks?
I mean, I just think it's one of the kind of things about particularly a lot of these mission-driven organizations is that there are limited resources, and you have to basically where you're going to put which baskets you're going to put your eggs in, and if you're putting them in the wrong one, you're obviously not going to run a very successful campaign. But also, I think nowadays, in particular, people are very interested in the topic of should I be trying to win over my opponents? Like if people are very, very entrenched and they're coming at your campaign from a very specific mindset, is it worth the opponents? Am I likely to succeed? That obviously is different issues, but nowadays with people with a lot of preconceptions, they've seen some charts, they know what the data is. I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have.
And just so in thinking about that a little bit more clearly, with you, Nani, is the election commission, do you think they're an ally neutral parties, or are they opponents to what you are trying to do in giving prisoners voting rights? I have my own assumptions, but don't want to make them about what is happening there in Malaysia. Great. And anyone else, in terms of Sophie or Timothy, if you want to talk or give us a little bit more insights into the who that you are trying to get your data to be able to convince stuff, that would be really helpful. Great. And so Timothy, you're trying to motivate an electorate with a lot of inertia. Is your electorate are they neutral parties? Are they like often first-time voters? Are you trying to get people that have not been engaged yet with the electoral process? And also, just to say, Hannah, sorry, Lucy, I'm reading a lot of these. I hope you don't mind my voice being overtaking. But Hannah, you're speaking to CSOs that have little to no experience with data that they and their community can use and benefit by using data in their activism. So that to me sounds very much like, yes, you are trying to get to neutral parties and get them educated. Great. And Timothy, reaching out to first-time voters, huge aim for us. That's something near and dear to my heart. I just can't tell you how much I get engaged with enfranchisement and trying to get more people involved in the voting process. So hats off to you. I hope that goes well. So Lucy, should we take them on to the next question? And these are all great. Thank you so much for putting stuff in your
getting a flavor of where people are going with this. Okay, so next thing we need to know is where the data is coming from. For example, is it an existing data set which you're getting from somewhere else? Or is it data that you're somehow compiling yourself? And we can talk a bit about the pros and cons of each of them, but is it existing data, you somehow generating it by other means?
Yeah, and also just to say, like, one of the things on this is, getting back to that bit of like, oh, I have a data set, maybe I should use it. One of the things that often people come up against when they are using a data set to answer a question that they have, but that wasn't what the data set was actually for, is that they find that the data is not the right data for answering their questions. So often folks do get into this thing of, maybe starting with a data set, but then figuring out that they have to collect the data themselves. Lucy, do me a favor and do some reading. Let's get your voice going.
I was about to ask you if you want me to read it. Okay, so we have Hannah saying that they are collecting data from their own monitoring and evaluation process. I'm guessing that's what M&E means, Hannah. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And Timothy is wrestling with how much of the commercial surveillance advertising apparatus to use and how much data to gather on potential voters. Meaty question.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think it does really come down to this bit of like, what are these questions that you are trying to answer and who you want to prove. One thing in terms of going out and collecting your data that I think is a huge benefit to people is that is a great way to get people engaged and involved. So if you're going out and doing any sort of surveying or anything like that, that's a really great way to start doing that education in the thing of the surveys. But then also, you are more likely to be able to get that resonation within the narratives, the stories that you tell with the data, because people people know that their story is involved in that data, and so they are more likely to trust it. Anything else? And curious with also you, Nanny, and Sophia, if you have anything to share in terms of where you're going to get data from.
Or maybe there's just no data.
Or there's no data yet.
Anyway. And then he says, getting data from prison wardens. I'm not sure the Electoral Commission have any.
Yeah.
Frontline data collection. That's what we like.
Yes, yes, indeed. It'll be so fun. So, to take us on to the next question we have. Oh, and just to say, we're at question. Didn't realize that I should do this, but just to say, we're at question 4 out of 6. So the fourth question, what we think is really critical is for you to understand what will people need to do with your data. So obviously you are collecting data, but then people are going to somehow have to get engaged with it and do things with it. So thinking again in terms of allies, neutral parties, or opponents, allies are they going to be picking up your data and using it in their outreach work? Are your allies involved with collecting data and giving you data? But then are they also wanting to reuse and repurpose your data for other audiences? Or maybe they want to repurpose it for a complementary campaign, something that will also work well with the campaign that you are doing. If you're going to use the data for neutral parties, will you be illuminating something that people didn't know is happening within their community? Perhaps you're uncovering an injustice that folks weren't aware of. Or are you just trying to motivate people to become more involved? And then finally, opponents, which gets quite tricky. One of the things about opponents, like I said, these are the folks that we want to discredit and we want to counter. So one of the things that you have to understand is their tactics are going to be the same back at you. And what they're going to be really wanting to do with your data is discredit it, right? They are going to want to be countering your data. So as much as you can use that data to prove that something is happening, that is really, really, really critical. So think about that a little bit in terms of the different folks and how is your data gonna be used once you get beyond that?
So you just want to restate the question.
Oh, what I'm asking. So what will people need to, what are they gonna need to do with your data? What are you asking people to do with your data?
And is it different if they are allies, neutral parties, or opponents?
Yeah. And how is it different?
Should probably give people some time for this.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And also too, if you have anything from your experience, Lucy, in terms of trying to think this bit through that you might want to share.
I think there's some good examples around. There's obviously a big difference if you're trying to make a kind of some kind of way of presenting the data that's going to have it's going to be very flashy. It's going to deliver a message very quickly, versus having people who are probably more involved in the topic. So the first approach is good if you're like somebody who's coming across the topic for the first time. But when you're, for example, if you've got people within your within the people that you're trying to target who are much more expert, and again, coming back to this trust topic, trust your data if you just present it as a shiny, finished thing. Does that affect how you're going to present it? For example, maybe they need to do their own analysis.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm just realizing I have an example. I just have to make sure that it's ready to go, and this might help illuminate stuff for people. Here we go. No, it's not this one. And
okay, we've got some answers coming in as well.
Oh, go.
So Hannah's answer is decision makers in civil society organizations decide to invest time and resources to develop data literacy in their organization. So I guess that's the outcome that you're going for, Hannah, and then the what you need people to do with data is come to a decision to activate the change. And Timothy says, we are aiming to give citizens a handle on how government affects them and what their handles are to affect government policy. That's great. Dirk definitely has a policy example for you. It's, I think, an educational mission as well as the short-term goal of getting them out to vote. Very well thought through stuff. And when Dirk can show you his examples, I hope that some of those.
I can. I'm nearly like, I can't believe I closed this. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, I'm all set. So, so just to show this, and I'm gonna apologize to Hannah because she saw this the last time. But to give you a quick example here of what does your data need to do. This is an example of a data visualization that was created actually for sex workers. So the purpose of this data visualization is for sex workers to understand what is happening in their communities and who is actually victimizing them. So, you know, what happens to people that are victimized by violence is they experience it on an individual level and not on a community level. So that's really critical. So, but if you are looking at the same data, but you're presenting it to somebody else, so this is an example of the exact same data, but it is being presented to the police. And you'll notice there that it has the thing on the side that says, are you protectors or you exploiters? So what this is showing is that to the police that they are actually the greatest perpetrators of violence against sex workers, and even far higher than criminals. So, you know, depending on your argument, depending on who you are putting these things in front of, your data, the same exact data looks very different. Your message becomes very different depending on what it is that you want your data to be doing. And I'm going to stop that. There we go.
Dirk has a wealth of awesome examples. We have one more example. Dirk, do you want to take back over the reading? You haven't read something for a while.
Yes. Where did you leave off? Timothy or
I read Timothy's.
Yeah. Okay. So Nani, it is uncertain that election commission, prison wardens, and police are facilitating voter process since the election watchdogs did not cover prisoners' voting rights in previous years. I am hoping data can be used for outreach from election commission and also used for advocacy from CSOs and journalists. The election commission and prison wardens should be held accountable if the voting process was not facilitated in the past. Our prisons are publicly funded prisons, and we don't have private funded prisons. And well done, because we've seen what that's like in the States. But not to say, sorry, shouldn't get into comparing nations on that. But yeah, that's really critical that you have this idea of different folks and what their different, the different sort of perspectives and takes on your data and what that's going to be and what you need it to do.
Is it time for the next question, do you think, Dirk? We're nearly there. We're on 5 out of 6.
We're on 5 out of 6, folks. We are nearly there. So, Lucy, go ahead. Take the next question.
So, question 5 is how you plan to deliver your data. So I'm going to leave it as a very open question, but don't assume that it has to be a visualization. Think outside the box. Like, what's the most appropriate, given everything that we know about these people so far? What people need to do with the data, whether they're allies or opponents.
And just to say, like, to jump onto an example with that, one of the things that I was quite surprised to find myself learning in this idea of how do you convey the right data to the right people is that, you know, if you are working with folks that are more, shall we say, policy wonky, but more wonky, they actually might prefer getting a spreadsheet as opposed to a data visualization. They might want to be doing that analyzation themselves of the data. So it depends on how, yeah, wonky and all that folks get. Would depend on how you are then delivering of it. And it might be a spreadsheet. It might not be a data visualization.
Or it might be something totally wacky. I heard of there's a group in Austria, I think, who are doing data tours of the city to try, because they've got a lot of data about the city from different sources, from official sources, from, I assume, sensors and transport ministries. And they're actually doing tours with people to talk them through what that means, which I think is interesting. I haven't actually been on one, but I find it interesting as a concept.
Yeah, no, that is good. And that's to say, like, there's lots of different ways that data can be conveyed, and it doesn't have to even be 2D or on a computer or all that. It can actually be walking through the physical world, and so important to think about that, like, how is it going to go across? Do you have any examples you wanted to share, Lucy, at this point?
Not particularly that's relevant to that point, just verbal. Sorry, it's my dog.
Okay, well, I will do one more, and this is actually that's all I got. So, but just to show here, so this is a map. You can see there it's Eastern Europe. What it is showing on that map is actually violence against women who use drugs. And what's interesting in terms of the map, or what I like about maps, you can compile again, you know, information about what happens or is experienced on an individual level, but the instant you put it on a map, it becomes information about what is happening in a community. So a map becomes a way that you can engage community members in terms of, hey, here's what is happening in our community. This is what is actually happening. So maps super important in that context. Great. Lucy, I think we should move on and see if we can get to questions, because we're getting on. So if you don't, oh, do we have one? No, sorry. So I think the final thing that we wanted to cover today is this idea of how are you going to make sure that people are going to trust your data? So how will you, and also in the how are people going to trust it, we also want you to think a little bit about, like, how do you make sure that people have understood it? So one of the things that we both find really important in this is doing the prototyping, right? Making sure that you do get your data out into the world and see how people interact with it and what they take away from doing it. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing is just, you know, are you making sure that you are putting across a compelling story, and this idea of, like, are people seeing themselves in your data? Is this something that is actually resonating with that? And also just to read the two things that come in, Timothy. So Timothy is thinking of using data to pull out typical means clustering, profiles of people's neighborhoods, businesses, and helping people put their own stories in context. That's a great idea. Hannah, in Civicus, membership context, email, workshop, websites have hands-on activities applying data to organizations' activities, as well as providing real examples of CSOs using data. You guys have a 3-month and 6-month M&E follow-up, and that's all really, really good stuff. So, Lucy, anything else you want to add or show examples of for this particular question?
I just think that maybe we should just restate the question again.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we asked was how are you going to make sure that people are going to trust your data, and how will you know that they've understood it? I have an example. It's not a visual example. I have an example of an experiment that I think is great. It's mainly useful for something that you intend to have a pretty quick impact, bearing in mind that a lot of things that people see on the internet, they have very short attention spans for, and so your delivery mechanism has to have pretty quick impact, and it's just a 5-second test. So you show people the thing that you're trying to get them to look at, and then take it away from them and ask them some very simple questions about, okay, what did you see? What do you remember? What do you think about it? Things like that. But they only get a few seconds to have a look at it and digest it.
To look at it.
Yeah. They can digest it later, yeah. Obviously, things like that aren't super appropriate if you're hoping for people to engage a bit more deeply with your data. Some lessons will only be learned by drilling down and experimenting with something. But yeah, I wanted to take the opportunity to hammer home that please test your content message.
Please test your content. And I think the other part, sorry, go ahead.
That's everything. I'm done.
That's okay. So and I think the other part of that we're saying is really important for you to be doing is making sure that people can see where the data is coming from. Like, can they see a source? Is within your story an explanation of where that data is coming from, and therefore how is it verifiable? How is it true? How is it real fact? And these are the bits that is really important, both in terms of this fake news post fact world. We have to be really clear about where data comes from and how we are using it. But I think the other thing is it's really important for us to be putting our own subjectivity out there, to be saying, this is what I am trying to accomplish. And so, this is how my data might be subjective in terms of that. So Lucy, do you have stuff now? Can I get you to show an example, one of your groovy examples?
An example. I'm trying. I realize now that we can send a link to an example that I was thinking of that I don't have in front of me now, but I can show you some of the things that I collected that have been some of my favorite examples from the past couple of years. Just while people are collecting things. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay, can you see this?
I can see me. There you go.
Right. So actually, that wasn't what I wanted to show you first. But on the topic of just very quick, clear visualizations that make very clear at a glance what you're looking at. I really, really loved this visual, which came out not long ago, I think, maybe some point last year. But it was on research and into films. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. But basically, who talks more in films, men or women? And I actually think that this is a fantastic, just very clear way to prove a point. There were lots of people whose mission it was to promote awareness of things like the Bechdel test. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it's basically a test that is applied to films to see whether there are any named female characters who have a conversation about anything other than a man in the film. It's surprising how many films do not pass this test, but awareness of that was being promoted, and at the same time this research came out, which kind of reinforced that message. And just in terms of the last thing that I was talking about testing your content, I think this is a really good example which would be suitable for testing, where you give people a visual like this and then tell them to repeat back to you what they think the message of it is. So yeah, that's one of my examples. Dirk, would you like any more, or should we go back to the chat?
If you've got, I think the examples are great. So if you've got one more,
okay.
To show, and actually I kind of like that hurricane. God, why can't I say hurricane? That was groovy.
Sure. So we'll send you after the hangout the links to these ones that we've referenced here. But while I was preparing for this, I was just doing some research into how different people in different contexts show uncertainty. And one of the examples that comes up again and again is obviously a very mission critical example. What do you do when you think that a hurricane is likely to hit, but you don't have, all you know as a scientist is the probability of it in various different courses based on the evidence that you have at hand at a particular moment in time. And so the way that they tend to do this is by putting, I think they call it a funnel. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay. So they put a kind of a couple of different targeted paths, one which they think is probably the most likely in increasing orders of likelihood to show where the hurricane could possibly hit. And I like this example because it usually has to be accompanied with a narrative. People have to be told as well, okay, if you're in this location, definitely get out. If you're in these other locations, you probably want to think about it, because people don't people generally find it quite hard to translate probabilities into real world actions, like what they should actually do. So I think it's a good example just to be like, yeah, don't just rely on the visualizations. Tell people what they need to do if they see this.
Great.
Yes.
Super good. And so I'm going to show, that's the 6 questions, and I'm going to now show you the data pipeline, just to say we are then either going to pause to answer questions, or we'll go towards the end. So if you do have any questions for us, you can start putting them in the box while I show you the data pipeline. And so to say that if you are going to come to the workshop that we're having on Friday, May 19th, Buddy, I don't think Buddy's going to be there, but what we want to get much more deeply into are these different steps that are part of the data pipeline. And so we've taken you through a bit of this today, which is, how do you ask the question? How do you find your data? How do you get the data? We didn't do too much on cleaning data and analyzing data, but we did talk a little bit more about presenting data. But then the most critical bit about all of this is, how are you using all this to mobilize and build community? So yeah, like I said, we will be talking about that more in the workshop and getting much more in depth into these pieces of the data pipeline. And so we hope you'll come to that. But before we go,
don't forget the testing when you've got your presentation.
And we were just like, oh geez, before we started the thing, we were looking at it and going, we've got to add testing into the data pipeline, which we will be doing, and also have updated graphics soon, which says testing in terms of it. So thanks, Lucy. We'll just pause for a second, give you guys a minute are there any questions for us at this point of the Hangout? We certainly have appreciated you guys being here, and all that you've contributed so far. This has been great, but any questions at all? And also just to ask Lucy, do you have anything else that you want to add? Any pearls of wisdom?
I think if you give me the opportunity to talk again, I'm just going to say test your visualization.
Go out and test. And no, actually, that is. I mean, I think, and I think this other bit. Sorry, I asked you, and now I'm talking. But I think you are right in the. And also in that bit that we are saying in terms of making sure that you are having people trust you. Testing is a great way to be building trust. It is a great way for you to get people to have that understanding that you get them, that you know what issues they are shaping, and that their story or their bit is part of what it is that you are trying to do with data. So testing is really critical. Yeah, how was that, Lucy?
I think we've answered everybody's questions.
We've answered everyone's questions, and so just to wrap this up, because we do really appreciate your presence here and you guys sticking through this. So I just want to give a quick plug to our upcoming workshop. It's going to be on May 19th. It is in London. It will only be £125 to register. One of the things to say is that the workshop is a participatory workshop, which means that you are going to get hands-on experience in integrating data tactics and methodologies into your own work right there in the workshop. So we are promising that you will come out with real data tactics that you can start using in your work, because you will have formulated them during the workshop. The other thing you'll get during this workshop is a chance to build solidarity with other participants. You are going to learn about their work, and they're going to learn about yours, and also, yeah, that learning from one another, which is what I love. We're in a great location. It's called Better Bankside, and the real reason you want to come. No, all of those are the reasons you want to come. But also you get to spend more time with me and Lucy. And I think the thing to say about spending time with me and Lucy, like Lucy and I love to spend time together, but we also love and adore spending time with participants at our workshops and getting to know and understand them better. And so that, yeah, please come is what I'm trying to say. Lucy, any final words from you?
My dog wants to give you some final words. He's barking very loudly.
Which I am loving. I love having a thing. And folks, so to say thank you to Lucy so much for doing this with me today, and I'm really looking forward to the 19th. But just to say thank you to all of you. I know the text box wasn't the most interactive way to get across, but I love what you guys have given us today. It's been really great to learn more about you, and to say, be in touch. If you can't make it to the workshop in London, I am always happy to give an hour here and there to people that are doing great work. So do feel free to get in touch with me, dirk@fabwriters.net. You will be getting follow-up email from us, and so please feel free to engage us more if you want to have direct questions and you can't make it to the workshop on London. We really appreciate it. So thank you all. And I am going to end this broadcast here. So thanks very much, folks.